Okay, we are live. Good afternoon. Good morning, Tali. I am morally neutral, Kay, and this is Off My Chest, Tali. And we're going to be talking a bit today, I guess, about the right, conservatism, how we got here, do we belong here, where's the party going, how we feel about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like was my alignment with that side of the aisle just for a moment in time, or is there something deeper going on? Is it just that it was more aligned than it was with the left? You know, I just have a lot of questions, kind of seeing where some things are going in the last little while.
Yeah. Kay, it's great to be back with you.
Yes.
We touched base yesterday. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. Both of us, for the people who are watching, who have seen our first conversation, and even our second one, we both like come from the left. And within the last 5 years, would that be safe to say?
Yeah.
Within the last 5 years, a little shorter for me, we both had sort of an ideological turn to the right, basically. You know, it starts as like a sort of like a rejection of wokeism and the excesses of the left. And I know for me, I kind of wanted to stay in that space for a while, and I did for a while. I was still kind of holding on to my left-wing bona fides, but the worldview just kind of starts to break down. And I really realized at a certain point, like, I just am on the right. And that felt...
Oh. I think you have paused.
Even kind of icky. It was something to come to terms.
You are cutting out, and I cannot hear you anymore, Tali. Okay, let's give it a second and see if...
How about now?
He comes back. Yeah, now it's back.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a connection or whatever.
Okay.
But whatever you were saying, maybe re-say it.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, basically, we both kind of moved from the left. And for me, at least, I know I tried to hold on to my left-wing bona fides for a while, and then realized that I just, my worldview, the way that I like want to approach things and think that government intervention should be approached, and my concerns with like social and cultural issues, like I just am on the right. And I registered as an independent. So I changed my registration away from the Democratic Party. But I didn't register as a Republican for whatever reason. I think, I don't know, probably at the time that I did this, which was like, you know, almost a year before the election, I didn't really I don't know, I didn't feel like I was on the right so much as like center right. And I think that the kind of crisis that we're feeling now, and that we were talking about a little bit yesterday, is like the movement and the party versus like the principle. And while those things sort of run parallel, sometimes they come in conflict. And yeah, where is the space for people like us?
And I feel like, I don't know how much, if we look at it if we look at it on a right left continuum, I don't know where, if I fit as much to the right as I fit with a like conservative disposition, because I feel like a conservative disposition probably explains the way in which I see the world and the solutions, which I think are would be more effective or impactful, as opposed to like a sheer right and left dynamic. It's like we are moving forward. Like, I'm not anti-progress, but like progressivism is like running headfirst down into the abyss. And as a conservative, it's not about like stopping all progress or everything, but it's about like we're going to put some brakes on it. We're going to like think about the things where we're going. We're going to like make sure that the bad ideas don't get implemented and that we do things slowly. That way we can, you know, see the unintended consequences and the downstream effects, which I think that like the left doesn't really like to take into account. Or it's like, oh, there's the problem here with this, and then we're gonna, instead of rolling back what we've done, we're just gonna like plug it with another progressive solution that's like it's all the patchwork band-aids, you know.
Right. Another intervention. Yeah.
And we will forever never get there because it will never be the utopia. You know what I mean? So we will constantly, instead of looking at how it doesn't work, it'll just constantly be like layering one thing onto the next, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And like there is this sort of, in the American context, and the same kind of goes for the English speaking world in the, you know, in their own slightly differing forms. But there is this kind of clash of like right-wing classical liberalism and this sort of like heritage Americanism, which is really a new thing, or it's becoming newly mainstreamed. It's not necessarily a new idea. But yeah, like you said, I think there's a desire among some people on the right, and I think a lot of this is a reaction to the left and to not just the overreaches of the left, but like what you're saying, the sort of like fundamental issue with the left or progressivism, right? But I think you make a good point of like progression is natural. It is the consequence of humans existing, right? Like we learn, you know, for the people, if God gave us these brains, right, and created us, like we've developed all of these technologies. And yes, I agree with you. Like I want a more conservative framework that is going to weigh the efficacy and the benefit, the cost, do a real cost benefit analysis of intervention, right? Not just kind of like trauma porn and say people are suffering, so we must do this thing, right? A stark consideration of the trade-offs. But yeah, like societies are going to progress, and I'm good with that. I'm happy about that, right? That is the type of society that I want to live in. Those are the most successful societies. So I kind of scoff at the people who seem really anti technological progress, I guess, in some way on the right. But I guess part of this then for me, and I'm always just like in my feelings about politics, is what maybe some people don't take me so seriously. But you know, I feel like, well, you know, who am I to tell the right what their priorities need to be? I'm really a newcomer here, and it's interesting because I was listening to an interview that Batya did on her new show, Batya Ungar Sargon. She had Dave Rubin on for an interview, and Dave,
I heard some of that.
Yeah, who did his move like 10 years ago now in 2015, he was saying he still feels like a newcomer to the right, you know, and I think, you know, there is like I don't know, I don't think irony is the right word, but there's something interesting about it's like Batya and Dave and like, you know, me and you and all of these. This is a Jewish phenomenon, a disproportionately Jewish phenomenon, like so many things are, who are, and so, yeah, I'm like, the conservatism is supposed to align with the Republican Party, with the right. And I feel cringe having this conversation because it's like, oh, are you and I just doing another version of never Trumpism? You know, the people who were like, well, I'm a Republican and these are my values, but you know, Trump doesn't represent. And those people had a good point in a lot of ways, a really good point. And lots of people who now support Trump begrudgingly, or they've just reevaluated over time, also had those same concerns about Trump, and they were true. You and I talked about this yesterday, and this is not we're not the first person at all to comment on this. But Trump was like a '90s liberal in many ways, you know. He's not a very ideologically driven person, really.
No.
But so it's like I feel a little cringe, which I think is just the product of the culture that we're in. I think I am a little bit too online, you know. Like I think the based ritual and all of these things that, that are kind of going on the right. I
Yeah.
both dislike them, and I'm part of the, the boomer woke scolds, as they would classify it. But also, I'm like cautious of that optical game too, and it's like, am I doing that thing?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think that there's like this hard pivot to the right into like the super anti-Jewish, anti like the Reapers, the Nick Funt, like that whole like side of things. That does not seem conservative to me, because that is like demanding a lot of change at a very quick pace. Like that is not going slow and figuring things out. That is not they could say it's a return to something, but just because you say it's a return to something doesn't mean it actually is. Like you literally cannot go back in time. You can only go forward. So you cannot take aspects of the past and plug them into the future and expect to have some of the good outcomes that maybe those things get like brought once upon a time in, like, you know what I mean? Like 100 years later in the future. Like this, just like life does not work that way.
Yeah, you're almost being too generous. And this is where the disappointment in people like Megyn Kelly comes in for people like you and I, is like, yeah, okay, they're yearning for the successes of some of these things that might be unrealistic. And no, they're yearning for what they're perceiving of this as the successes of these like ultimately like damaging tyrannical practices and governments. And they would call this out on the left, like Hassan Piker, for example, right? He's just on trigonometry. He's making the rounds on liberal and alternative media. And yeah, people transparently see it as ridiculous. He's saying he wants the good parts of communism and socialism, right? But he, without having to reckon with the devastation and the tens of millions of people who were killed and died and suffered, under these regimes. So it's like, I don't really, and maybe, Batya said something in that interview with Dave that I want to try to emulate. Like, we beat these ideas before, so we just need to do it again. Every generation like forgets this is like a real phenomenon, right? And so we just need to beat them again. And so maybe it is that simple, and we're gonna get through this. They're gonna win because it's true, right? But yeah, it's not conservative. And again, every day the mask just slips further and further. Wasn't Nick Fuentes was like literally calling for socialism. He literally, he wants an economic, he said he wants left-wing economics, right? Like he literally wants to partner, with the
he was saying something about the left and the right.
Yeah.
Getting together. And if they had a party, it would like rule for 100 years or something. Like,
and he's
something to that effect.
And yes, and so he's not, and so he's not just calling for this collaboration. He's not just saying come to our side. He's explicitly saying we need to take on their economic worldview. Yeah, which is like that's the least right wing thing. Like it to an almost laughable extent, right? Like, people can complain or rejoice in the fact that the Republican Party over time, and especially in the last 10, 15 years, has become much more open to less traditional family dynamics, what I mean, gay people, whatever, all of these things. So the right has moved in some social aspects, right? But the conservative economics is right. It's supposed to be, that's like,
who on the left is going to work with Nick Fuentes? Like, let's be real. Like, who, like the left won't work with itself, like, let alone working with the right. The left won't even, literally, it is tearing itself apart because it's not left enough. They're going to go work with the right. It's never going to happen.
Some of them will, and they might draw the line at, and we talked about this, and this is true. I think, again, this is like sort of a difference,
but broadly,
maybe a difference between the left and the right. Right, exactly. They're never going to all get on board. That just won't
Nothing
happen.
led by Nick Fuentes, though.
Right.
Nothing led by
But
him. They will.
right, but
Yeah.
and he might be the line that they'll draw because they will work with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, you know.
I
The
don't know. You think the
some of
woke?
not so sorry, not the majority. I completely agree with you.
Okay.
Because it's part of their virtue signal, but some of them will. And I mean, again, we can just look at Anna and Cenk as like the prime examples. And it's really not just Anna and Cenk. I mean, it's that whole alt left online media sphere. It's Crystal Ball, it's Ryan Grimm, it's all of these people. So there are people who will actually, you know, will form this alliance. But you're right. It's not gonna gain. I don't think it's gonna gain purchase on the majority of the left because it's still.
I can't see it happening.
No, right? Because it would require. Well, there's cynical reasons and non-cynical reasons why the majority of the left wouldn't partner with Nick Fuentes for an M. Some of them also, I don't know, man. Some of them will. Okay, what I'm about to say, this is gonna be rambling.
All right.
There's even for people like us or like me, I'll say, right, who kind of leave the left and try to come away or away from a woke perspective, right? I remember like one of the first adjustments to my worldview that I made was like so many of these issues that we're talking about are not really about race, or rather race is a proxy for class, for economic, you know, viability and stuff like this. And so you know, it's like instead of giving resources to, you know, Black neighborhoods or whatever, you give resources to people at this certain, you know, income level or whatever, and you lift all the races of the boats that are at that point or whatever. And that is like true and makes sense. And that turns into a lot of like class warfare that I also really don't like and I'm like very averse to. But all that to say, there are, I think, some people on the left who can lean into that because their framework is the economic stability of the working class. You know what I mean? And that is their top priority or the orientation of the way they view the world.
Yeah. And so you can still help people based on class and like without treating them not like individuals. Like, you know what I mean? Because it is about their individual like need as opposed to like.
Well, that is very like counter to left wing thought, though, right?
Yes, but it's a way that you can do it. The left likes it because it's addressing, you know, the inequity, like financial disparities, but you can do it in a way that is not
right.
You know, like a equity type of or a DEI type of thing, you know.
No, that's true, right? And so there's a segment of left that I think that might work with them, but then of the larger majority that wouldn't. Again, the steel man and the most generous interpretation, and I think this does apply to lots of people on the left, is they're disgusted with the racism component. They don't give a shit that this person, you know, or these people would become aligned with them on their like economic worldview, right, or the economic policy that they want to enact. They are totally turned off by the conspiracism and the racism and the anti-Semitism and all of these things, right?
Yes.
And then there's also the people who wouldn't work with him because they can't give up the virtue signal. Like there are a lot of people who are left-wing anti-Semites, you know, in to me, right, in sort of an unquestionable way to me. Who they're not going to work with Nick Fuentes because they have to call him an anti-Semite. They need to have someone to, you know, to show that I'm not this, right? And so I think that's my cynical read. And there are certainly a lot of people who fall into that camp also, right? They need to have the baddies to contrast themselves from, even though they are in some ways just like clones of each other with if you plug and play a few different things, right? If you fetishize whiteness instead of fetishizing brownness, right, and blackness, because that's what both of these things are, you know, in their extremes.
yeah, I can't see it. I don't know. Maybe somebody else will take it and do it. I just can't see. I can't see him doing it. I can't see people advocating for him to be any type of like serious person in a political conversation. Like, I don't know. I don't even know if
He's going to get
wants
purchased
that.
on the right before
You
he's
know
going
what
to
I
get
mean?
purchased on the left. Right. But yeah, that's a good point. Does he even want that? And like, how much is it really about him? And it is about him in that he really does have like a, a cult of personality, right? And he does
Mhm.
have a following, and he does this like, it's obviously a joke thing, but like has them take a pledge, right?
Yeah.
And not that he's like demanding this of them, but he's saying it on his
No.
stream, right? And imagining the people are repeating it, and they are. These people are repeating it and tweeting it and typing it in the chat and
Yeah.
whatever. But so it is about him in some ways, but also it's not just
No.
about him. There are
It
plenty of people
exposed
out
something
there.
else. Yeah.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
definitely exposed something else. And he was around pre, October 7 stuff, and his message was similar, but he gained a lot of like, a lot of people became more critical and were more sympathetic to some of the arguments that he was making. And I don't necessarily think that he cares about those arguments. Those are just arguments in service of dehumanizing Jews. Like, it doesn't matter what the argument is. It's just like, does it work to bring people over? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
as opposed to anything else.
or even
so he had
really
a lot of people who were trying to,
villainizing Jews. I don't even know, and like, not to have a semantic argument here, but like, I don't know that his project is about dehumanizing Jews, and I think that's the kind of the wrong way to frame it. It's what makes he dehumanizes other races. He certainly does. He looks down upon them.
But yes,
He looks
thinks Jews
up.
are uniquely selfish and
He
I guess
demonizes
like
Jews. He
unique.
doesn't dehumanize them, though.
Yeah.
I guess maybe what you're saying is that he portrays Jews as like morally incomplete in some way,
Yeah,
or
or
defective in some way.
uniquely sneaky, uniquely like self-involved, uniquely like nepotistic, as opposed to other groups. And he couches it in like, well, it's definitely in their self-interest. Of course they would. Like, but other people, other groups do this too. Like, it is not uniquely the Jews who have like their own little communities, places. You know what I mean? It's just like there's nothing that unique like about them in the ways that is often portrayed to, I don't know, you know what I mean? Make them appear to be like controlling things in some sinister, malevolent way behind the scenes that is supposed to be hidden from view. Like, which is just
yeah. No, yeah, and I struggle with this a lot, for a few reasons, and I think I've talked about this with you, on our streams here. But like, there was a lot of overreaction to claims of anti-Semitism, or at least like a lack of generosity, a lack of charitability, rather, maybe. Like, because a lot of people fall into anti-Semitism and actually don't know they're being anti-Semitic. And again, as someone who was converted away from believing in microaggressions, like, you can't and shouldn't impugn the malintent to people. But and along those lines, I was watching an interview yesterday with this former Nazi, basically, and he like came out of the American neo-Nazi movement in 2019, so like relatively recently. And he, I guess, just published a book, American Nazi. And anyway, he was an interesting guy, and in some ways there are these parallels of him and Nick Fuentes in ways that like I had to reckon with, because part of Nick Fuentes' story, the way that he portrays it, and the way that a lot of people have been very happy to launder because it demonizes Ben Shapiro and the Jews and all of this stuff, is that he was unfairly canceled by the Jews, basically. He was just a kid. He was just a kid asking questions. He was just a kid being edgy, whatever. And Ben Shapiro, plucked him out of obscurity and blasted his name out there and created a monster of him. And he lost all of his opportunities and he was deplatformed and debanked. And he was treated in really extreme ways, in ways that I don't like, that I want him to be defeated, not deplatformed. Right. But I was really annoyed about not about him framing it this way. I understand that he would. And to me, it looks like he's just trying to paint himself as a victim, which to me is a turnoff. It's unappealing to me as someone who believes myself to be on the right. And the way that I view the world and personal responsibility and all of these things. So I sort of resent that framing when other people are promoting it, because it's like, first of all, it's not entirely accurate. Like he says that like Ben Shapiro just like found his tweet. Like, no, you were tweeting at Ben Shapiro. You were tagging him. Okay. Like you were instigating this conversation. You were calling him out specifically. You weren't making general critiques. You were criticizing him specifically and he responded. Was he more famous than you? Yes, obviously. Is there an argument that he shouldn't have fed the trolls? Sure. But you apparently were on his radar in some way. You were being talked about as a potentially new voice, young voice for the young conservative movement. So, he at least knew who you were in some way. But I resented that because, again, to me, it just like feeds this victimhood complex that I'm really not inclined to feed, But this guy, this reformed American Nazi, had a similar experience. He was doxxed at 19. His interest in Nazism started young. His grandfather and his uncles and stuff fought for Germany in the war. And, obviously his family moved to America and they didn't support Nazism but they just didn't talk about it. They didn't want to be asked questions about it, whatever. And he became curious and he goes down this road young. And he's doing pretty hardcore Nazi activism at 17, 18, 19. And at 19 years old, he gets doxxed on the radio, his local radio in, I think, Minnesota. And he was in a long-haired rock band at the time, and his mom was a lawyer who had just been elected to a judge position. And his mom, basically, they don't allow his mom to take the bench even after she was elected because of his doxing. And so it it has these real world consequences, and he triples down. He triples down. It feeds his persecution complex. And again, for me, when Nick Fuentes says this, I don't really have much sympathy, especially because I see he's lying about the story and he's demonizing Ben Shapiro. But then this other guy who did eventually come around, I'm like, well, we do need, man. It's not fair, but we need to consider the fact that is the response in many cases when you react this way, right? And that really a sort of, for him, it was kindness from people, frankly, and openness and sort of Socratic dialogue that ultimately got, it was Daryl Davis. He met Daryl Davis, essentially, was the first spark, right? And then 3 years later, he eventually comes out of the movement. But yeah, and I was like, well, damn, there's a lot of parallels between this guy's experience and the way that Nick Fuentes tells his story. And again, I don't know, but no, it is true. I cringe at the way that he tries to victimize himself. And also he really was made a total pariah. When you're branded as a Nazi before you're even 20 years old, that's a really hard thing. And you're calling yourself a Nazi too. And again, people should watch this interview. Maybe we can link it or something, because this guy is not asking for pity, right? Every time he says something like this, he also says, but I did it. I said the things, you know what I mean? I'm accountable for what I did. But yeah, I mean, Nick Fuentes didn't have a bank and didn't have all of these things. And again, I'm sort of hesitant to repeat all of these things because I don't know the veracity of all of them. I know it's part of his narrative. Yeah. But this kind of stuff does happen and certainly did happen 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, right? Yeah. And we have to reckon with it if we want to prevent it from spreading. Yeah. It's hard because I don't think, on an individual level, those conversations and kindness and talking to people in the real world and I don't know, letting people see that I don't know, Jews are people, or even people who hold different views on you. I think even people radically on the left, if I would sit down and talk to them,
I don't think they would think I'm right, but I don't think that they would walk away from a conversation like thinking I was evil. Like on a one-to-one basis, I think it's like so much easier to do. It's just like, what do we do when like these people have giant platforms and are spreading these messages? And I don't think like we prevent them from doing that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that there can be, I don't know, it's like a frustration, that we're here and that these voices seem to be getting a lot of traction. And I don't know that all of the attention and attraction and views and all that like, I don't feel that it's all like organic. I don't think, I think that there's like other things at play that are pushing this. That's like, either things are being inflated or bots or however, I'm not entirely sure, but as a way to make it look more popular than it is, because like the social proof of something, people think, oh, all these people are watching this, or all these people are seeing this, or all these people agree with this. It's like that manufactured consent type of thing.
Which is like the most left coded thing. But no, you're right. And interestingly, there's like levels to it, because on the one hand, it's a psychological thing. We see the number of views and the number of likes, and we're all kind of like vying after that. And we think, and that represents group approval, and we're social animals, right? And we want to do what our group is doing or our team is doing or whatever. And also in the literal sense, doesn't matter where these views are coming from. Views are what gets you paid. Views, on Twitter, on YouTube, things like this. So it's profitable. And I don't know. So this brings us to the issue that everyone's talking about, the potential Nazi or Groyper problem, and how big is it on the right? And is the right going to be eaten by their extremists like the left? And is the right actually just way worse than the left? Was the left right all along? All of these questions, right? And then how much of it is organic? How much of this is a young American problem versus, like you said, sort of manufactured in some way? Is it bots? Since Elon very recently turned on this new feature where you can see where people are located, for the most part, people can use VPNs. There are ways to, get around this. But for the most part, there was something like the top 6 like most popular Groyper accounts on Twitter. 5 of them are not from the United States. They're not based in the United States at all. 5 out of 6 of like the top most engaged with Groyper accounts. And so that's good. That's bad. It's foreign influence in our political and cultural issues. But it's maybe a good thing. Maybe it doesn't represent the electorate, and so that's something that's a positive. That's positive.
It's easier to deal with if the numbers or like the popularity isn't quite as intense as we think it is. And I think I think like the financial incentives for a lot of these messages are like very plain to see. When I look at stats on channels, and I looked at some YouTube channels, a whole bunch of YouTube channels, just to see what was going on, and you can see when they take this hard pivot to like anti-Israel or anti-Jews, the algorithm rewards them like heavily. Like TYT, their views were like fucking in the shit for months and months, like comparatively to where they were. And then you see in the summer, and you could see like the titles change on their videos, and you see the content that they're putting out pivots to like a much more anti-Israel, anti-IDF, anti-Israeli, like how it's been. And their views jump again and are back to pretty much where they were like a year ago, when they had been down like over like almost 50%. So that I don't know. And there could be other things, I'm not saying 100% that's it, but like, it's an interesting thing to notice, and when I see, and there's a lot of accounts that all around this time in June or July, start, having like these super inflated stats. So I don't know what it means exactly, but there's like, it feels like there's, I don't know, the incentives are not, I don't know.
No, yeah, and I agree with you. I guess the problem is we don't know how much of what. We don't know what the proportions are here. And I think, like, I don't want to write it all out. There are some people who are literally saying, like, wow, ever since Elon posted this, we have proof that all of this, none of this is homegrown. Like, thank God, guys. It's a false flag, false alarm. At least this is not a real American problem. And I think that's not true. That's too easy. Also, like, yes, there is literal foreign interference. I think both in, well, I'm sure there's like government directed interference, right? In literal ways. And also just like America's the center of the world. It just like is. And so there are people who are actually interested, like Ian Miles Chong, for example, right? Not that he's like an alt-right troll or anything, or certainly not anymore or whatever. But yeah, like I think he's just like he's like a globalist, and he just like really like is influenced and feels part of like American culture. You know what I mean? He's really interested in and cares about it. And he's motivated by making money online and all of these things, obviously.
And
but so there could be nefarious,
like, an audience for himself.
Yes. Yeah. There could be nefarious and even not so nefarious, like intentions for these people. But I think that this is a North American problem too. And how big is the problem? And it's really it's hard to know, especially when we're talking about all of these other factors and the potential foreign influence and stuff.
And it could even not be foreign influence. It could just be like, the algorithm is like rewarding you, and that could be organic, and the financial incentives make it harder for you to challenge your beliefs, because it's, if something's paying you very well, like, you might not want to examine, your views on it too much, that you would have to change. And that might not be a conscious thing that anybody's doing.
No, and I think that's probably,
if I were making money hand over fist, it would be very difficult to, like,
about for something you already believe or already plugs in very nicely into your worldview, right? And again, you and I spoke yesterday, and it's like, for those people who maybe they believe it and they're heavily reinforced with attention and money, they are just completely disincentivized from challenging it at all, right? There's the it can only hurt them to challenge it at this point, and so they just become so entrenched. But I mean, I'm a little more pessimistic, I guess. I think there are a lot of true believers out there, and I guess we'll have to. It's unfortunate that grievance politics is now just across the board, because the left, not to oversimplify, but let's say at least within the last 10 years, although it really goes like well beyond this, the left was about grievance, and the way longer than the last 10 years. Okay. And the right is about pick yourself up, by your bootstraps. Now the ascendant movement on the right is also about grievance. And so it's the boomer
for you.
Yeah. But it's really uncool to say that what used to be the right wing, the conservative response, which is essentially like, life isn't fair, and you have to go out there and like make the very best of it, and like put your head down and work hard, and government should make sure that they are not implementing discrimination and not putting additional roadblocks in your way, right? They should be protecting your liberties as much as possible in ways that leftist ideology tried successfully. White people were and are demonized and actually limited from opportunity in this country. It sounds like a dramatic thing to say, and it's not across the board, and it's not in every domain, and it's not every white person, obviously, but it's also true. There is discrimination on the basis of race and gender and sexuality and all these things in this country, in North America, in the English-speaking world, frankly, right? And so all of these things are true, and the response now of the ascendant movement on the right, not the entire right, and we're going to see how it all shakes out. But the response now on the right is, or this faction of the right is grievance, is well, yeah, they're picking on me right now. And so we need to do things to uplift my group and my class, as opposed to we need to remove the interventions. We need to remove the thumb from the scale, right? Which is what I thought. That's what I thought I was getting myself into when I moved over to the right. Was oh, whoa, right? I want to remove the thumb from the scale. It kind of in many domains, right, across society and government. And if that's not the future of the right, and it comes back to what you were saying about sort of separating conservative principles from the movement or the party or whatever, but then where are you left to have an impact in a two-party system? And I know Canada is different, but yeah, where does that really leave you, like, functionally?
I don't know, but like, yes, but the right, it also it just the way that their grievances, it's like now they're being like, they've always been anti-big government, but now they're like totally conspiratorial towards their own government in a way that is just like, look, it's good to question the institutions, but the degree to which the institutions have become completely untrusted and scrutinized and like targeted for every conspiracy is, I don't know. It's hard to understand how people can function in a world if they truly believe that, which makes me think that some people don't really believe it, but it's just like an easy thing to say, and it's an easy excuse to like, fall into. But yes, I don't know. I want institutions. I don't want to take away all of the institutions. Like, I don't want that to all go away. I don't want like the fucking, I don't know. Look, I don't want direct democracy. Like I want people in positions of like knowledge and a little bit more power or a little bit more in the know to, be making policies and decisions and figuring things out. Like, if you want, like I'm an elitist like that, if you will. So, but yeah, this whole, yes, the grievances on the right, they look and they sound very much like the left. It's like the same victim noises coming, you know what I mean? Yeah. Coming out just in a slightly different direction.
Well, and a lot of the same anti-Americanism, like you're saying, and like anti-Westernism, which to me is surprising, and maybe it shouldn't be. And part of it is my own ignorance, because again, I was just like raised on the left. My parents were on the left. Like this, it was really all I knew, and so I didn't know all the intricacies and sub factions and stuff of people on the right. But another sad thing for me, and I guess it's probably naivete, I think you articulated it well, is like this dislike of big government has morphed or has been chewed at from this dissident right movement into hatred of of America. You know what I mean? Yes. And that again is sad for me, because part of my move from the left to the right that was exciting and something I could take pride in was like, the right is patriotic. And it was a learning process for me, right? Because I believed America and the West to be uniquely evil and oppressive and imperialistic and all of these things, right? And when I had the way that I view these things change, right? That the West liberated the world in real ways, in significant material ways, right? Like lifting so much of the world out of poverty and abolishing slavery, not just in the West, but in the East in many places too. And so all of these things, it was like, it was cool. I was relieved for it to be cool. I had this new appreciation for America and Western values and tradition, and which was right coded and, whatever, like a more conservative way to view things. And now that seems to be gone. And it's like the Dave Smithization of like the right-wing party, which is like every American president is a war criminal and needs to be thrown in jail, and our government and country is responsible for like the plundering of the rest of the world.
It's such it's such a flattening way to look at the history.
And we're really fucked if both sides are just so black-pilled on our culture.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was like the left had their idealism co-opted and their empathy co-opted through like the radical left. You know what I mean? And they took this this the idealism that maybe the average leftist had of thinking, you know, how we can make the world a better place, and took it and twisted it into the fringe progressivism that we have now. And then the right, they took and
the
they
way to make
co-opted their
the way to make the
patriotism,
world, yeah,
or they co-opted their disdain for big government and took that and twisted it into this like hatred of all government and
yeah,
all government figure. You know what I mean? And the historic understanding through which like people view the world. And I don't think that, I don't know, I don't think the way people are taught now, like in school and overall, that culture is like reinforcing some of the same messages that we had earlier, that we're able to like, I guess, push against that a little bit more, because like almost all academic institutions are like hard left. Nothing, I don't know. There's governmental hatred from all around, and it's not like I'm like so pro government, but like we have to have a balance. We have to be able to see things accurately.
Yeah.
And I don't think
No,
that
we
like
do need some civic
Yeah.
nationalism. You're channeling Ryan Mullally right now, and I agree with you, right? And it's true. It's like, and there's an analogy for this in the Jewish world and the Jewish community, which is like, we didn't give the younger they don't have any foundation to understand their place in this world, and their peoples and nations place in this world, and like and so they're not equipped when they encounter these challenges, and that sound really compelling, and that are emotionally driven. They're just not equipped to combat any of this, and that is a failure of education in large part. Yeah. But there's also like, there's hypocrisy, and we're focusing on the right now, but obviously we're having this conversation because we're simply not on the left. You know, I don't want any really of what I don't want any of what the left is selling. So I really hope the right is gonna, you know, get themselves together. But it's like, yeah, they have antipathy for government, like you said, but really it's just antipathy for the American government, and this weird. It does just feel like anger at it's just the grass is always greener, because there's this weird fetishization of monarchy and feudalism in this like alt-right thing. And again, I mean, they're just all saying it. Like Tucker Carlson talks about feudalism a lot, as like this was when like life was just like good and better. And Carl Benjamin was just on the Stitch and Adams show. And that came up for him too, you know, like he's saying how liberalism is the basically the evil that we need to correct, the real problem with Western society. And yeah, that monarchy and feudalism are essentially the more natural and more right wing essential. It doesn't even make sense. I just feel like it's not even really coherent, and it's frustrating. And it doesn't feel particularly principled. And then, like we sort of said earlier in this conversation, for some of them, they're not even pretending to be principled about that anymore. They are literally calling for just a completely different type of government, or for explicit left-wing economics or whatever.
I don't know. It's hard to make sense of it, and it's hard to know, I guess, you know, what we do with it. And yes, I don't want anything on the left anymore. Like I am not aligned there. My world disposition is not like that of progressivism. Right. And I think that this is an interesting thing. I was like wondering if I went back into like the 80s or the 90s, it's like you just pop me in there now. Like, would I be a conservative in like 1990 or 1980s or the 70s? And I don't know that I would be, but I don't know that means that
that you're
the
fundamentally
world that I live in now doesn't call for that. So, and I think that the time and the place that we live can shape where we align ourselves. And I think that makes sense because things change. You know what I mean? So right. I don't know that like in the 80s and 90s when conservatism was like, I don't know, calling for bans on music and all kinds
Right.
of like silly things like I don't know that's something that I would feel, or even now that, you know what I mean, that is something that those are values that I feel very strongly about. But
Mhm.
where we have gotten today, and where everything we have here, you know what I mean? I'm kind of like, okay, and how far we've tried to push things in our very recent history. Do you know what I mean? And the
Mhm.
pace of technology at where we're at with like AI and everything coming. Now I think it's like it makes sense to slow down. You know what I mean? It makes sense to like look at things a little differently, because there are different times. I don't think I would necessarily. I don't have a huge grasp on all of the economic stuff, but maybe that. But insofar as like, you know, social issues go, I don't know if like socially I would fit into like a conservative worldview even like 20 years ago, you know.
Right.
But I don't know I don't know that I need to
Yeah.
to be there today,
No,
you know.
you're making a good point, and this is like something that I grapple with in different terms, and I hadn't thought about it explicitly in that way. It's a it's a question that I'm uncomfortable with in a sense, right? Because I'm like conscious of, and this is again, like I said, this is my own personal, issues,
Mhm.
and the way that I orient my politics, which for better or for worse, maybe likely for worse, is tribal and not, yes, I'm Jewish tribal in that way, but also just literally in like I want to be on the side of the people that to me best like that I agree with their worldview the most, like
Mhm.
that I am more aligned with. I do want to pick a team. I'm not really comfortable not having a team. And again, that's not a good thing. But that is a really good reminder that maybe I do need to get more comfortable not having a team, because right, I would like to believe at least that I wouldn't have been for that type of censorship in the same way
Mhm.
that again, when I voted for Trump in 2024, it was the right, well, people will point to like book bannings and stuff like that, right? But I mean, these were pornographic books being put into schools for
Yeah.
children and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it was the right that was trying to prevent the rewriting and censorship of like offensive language in classical literature and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and fighting right for freedom of speech, and it's true. And again, I need to get more comfortable with this fact that these things kind of volley back and forth, and no
Mhm.
one party has a monopoly on like truth or morality at any one point in time, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, like would I have been a conservative then? I don't know. And I say that I don't like that question, and I'm sensitive to it because so much of the rebuttal from people on the right
Mhm.
to people who are raising the concerns that you and I are talking about today, so much of the response to that is you guys are not, you were never on the right. And they're right when it comes to people like us. We simply weren't on the right, and it's like you guys are actually liberals who you just want to go back to 5 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago. You're not actually, you guys were here for convenience. You're not actually part of this movement. And again, I struggle with that because part of it, I'm like, well, that's true. And so, yeah, maybe you don't need to listen to what I'm saying, right? But like, but also, no, like you started with, I want to fight on the
Mhm.
principle, right? Like it shouldn't really matter. And I think the reality is like leaders and thought leaders of so many ideological movements are converts themselves, essentially, right?
Mhm.
They grow up in one tradition, they're raised in one tradition, and their views change. So like that shouldn't be a reason to keep people out, but there is truth to it. And I've talked about this. I talked about it a lot in our first conversation here. It's like so much of my political turn, it had to affect me direct. I had to get bitten by
Yeah.
the left very, very deeply
Mhm.
personally for me to realize that I was swimming in shit lake, you know? And then I realized that I was swimming in a shit lake, and I realized that all of it was shit, you know? And it went from just me being hurt by my side to realizing that my side is doing really shitty things to lots of people, right? You know, I didn't just go against the left because of anti-Semitism. I realized that the anti-Semitism was a part of the anti-whiteness, and now I fight the anti-whiteness. You know, it's not just about the way that it affected me, but it did take personally affecting me for me to see that. So would I have been personally affected by it in that way in the 80s or the 90s? I don't know, right? But should that like preclude us from meaningfully being part of the conversation? And I think what I realize is like, well, obviously I don't think it should, you know, but also like those people say that to the people who are Christian conservatives and have been for their entire lives, who are also calling this out, you know, like the Seth Dillons and the Joel Berrys, and there's a couple like much smaller accounts that I follow on Twitter, who are like religiously observant Christian conservatives, Republicans, and again have been for their entire adult life, and they're also calling this stuff out. So like, how do you shoo away what they're saying, right? Because they're not the people, they're not us and Dave Rubin and Batya and people who kind of joined this coalition and are former liberals or disaffected liberals or classical like right-leaning classical liberals. I feel like
I think I understand, I guess, the sensitivity. But to a degree, it's like, I don't know, you have ideas and you have thoughts about things, and like we all have just as much, I don't know, like right or ability to talk about these things and flush them out. And a good idea is a good idea, and like conversations are good to have. Like whether
it's actually very left and woke
or
it's
not,
woke
like
coded to say that you don't have the lived experience to speak on this subject. Actually,
you know, it's like who cares? You know, like we're here, we're people, we're alive in these times. Like don't listen, that's okay. Like no one's forcing you're not forcing your views on anyone.
Right.
So I don't know, I think it makes sense that like as the world changes, where we find ourselves and our attitude towards the world that we're living in and what we think is best for the society and culture we find ourselves in, because 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago to today are vastly different places. So my idea on what the world needs, or what, or what policies and what the government should be doing is going to look different based on where I find myself in time. Some of that may be from a moral and ethical standpoint, or like purely, and some of it may be from seeing things, and having some better understanding of like some of these unintended consequences that maybe people couldn't foresee like previously. So I don't think that makes it any less valid. We have to like take all of these, you know what I mean? Take all of these things in and kind of work with it. Otherwise, well,
yeah.
Otherwise, it's just like things aren't gonna move, and I actually think that probably political parties need to have that kind of like, being revitalized, if you will, with new people coming into them rather than staying completely static, So yeah, so I don't know if I would be back then, because the world was a different place and it needed different things. And we've gone so far into another direction now. Like things were like, I don't know, things were like, I don't know, the world felt very stifled at some point, and very small in what was allowed to be talked about and said. And then it kind of happened again on the other side. But yeah, in the 80s and 90s, it was very different. We had different challenges in a lot of ways. And then kind of way far off in some other directions, you know what I mean? Like overcorrecting. So
yeah,
I think it's, you're going to feel how you feel about it, but I just, it's just what I what I think. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, and I guess I need to, like I said, I have to put my own my own personal baggage about politics aside, right? Because I really like a lot of a lot of this is navel gazing to a certain extent, right? But it's like, okay, so then, and maybe it doesn't matter, but then it's like, so then what is our like underlying? To me, it feels easiest just to fall back and say classical liberalism, but like, what is the underlying foundation there, right? Of like, is what is the ideal society that we're trying to get to? And because we're not on the left anymore, we're not trying to reach some utopia, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. This whole thing really is the fight on the right is like, how far back do you want to go? Essentially, that's kind of the conversation that is taking place on the right. And yeah, I don't know where it's going to go. We're in a really interesting period, especially in America, because Trump is sort of like already, again, I'm not saying anything that these are not my own unique contributions to the conversation here, but Trump is like effectively a lame duck already, like less than a year or a year, I guess now, not even less than a year into his presidency. And so the right is already warring for what post-Trump is going to look like, which again is so interesting because it leaves all of those never Trumpers just like totally behind. You know what I mean? Like, they're not even in the conversation anymore because the conversation is already about what's it going to look like post-Trump. And then there are still people kind of like spending all their time and energy opposing Trump and Trumpism and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I just think that that's like such a waste of energy. Like, Orange man bad. Okay, move on. Fucking
and
just fucking get over it.
Yeah, and what is coming after the Orange man, right?
Yeah, it's too early
on the
to
left
tell.
and the right. It is right, which is the trippy part. Right, we have more than 3 years, really.
Yeah. And anybody who's like gonna, right now, I mean, if somebody blows up, or you know what I mean, like popularity wise, it's too soon. It's going to peak out and probably fall down. So you got to wait a little bit. I think probably some of the groundwork or trying to figure out what the landscape looks like is happening with all these, people arguing and talking amongst each other. But I don't know. I don't know if things are really gonna. I don't see what big changes that they're all. You know what I mean? Like, yes, they're all fighting. But I don't know what they're specifically fighting for. Like, you know what I?
Yeah, right. It does feel like there's not a lot of meaningful prescription to a certain extent. And then also just back to like the grievance, and this is the populism that we're seeing on both sides of the aisle right now. But like, really, how do we combat that in a sexy enough way? Because like there are people, and I'm gonna talk about Connor here for a second, who I like. I like a lot. But like he frustrates me a lot too. Because he's sort of bought into the P.F. Young analysis, and you and I are both like have a love-hate relationship with P.F. Young. We're really frustrated by his turn in many ways, and he's really Israel first in my opinion. But he has this like analysis that is true in a lot of ways, that there are like these domains of insecurity, basically, right? There's like financial insecurity, and there's like social incohesion or whatever, and that we can't just tell people to like get over it. We need to like really address these like material issues. And the two people, ironically, this is a full circle moment for me, that who have like confronted that. I think that's a kind of a ridiculous thing. Oh, you just need to like fix everything. That's all you have to do to solve the problem. You just need to like completely repair the economy and like stop the advance of technology that's going to change like, you know, the landscape for jobs and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the two people who I think I mean, Destiny is Destiny has also gone a direction that I don't like, but Destiny responded that way, I think, to Connor recently in a debate that they were having. Like, oh, you just need to fix literally fucking everything. You know, you just need to like repair the relationship between young men and young women and fix the economy, like, and increase the supply of housing and all of this stuff. Like, oh, what a simple solution.
Shit. Okay, yeah.
Right. And Ben Shapiro has sort of like the same response. Like, well, no, actually, we government intervention to like fix all of these. It's nothing like that is going to happen easily or quickly. And no, how do we get back to selling the conservative response of like, life is not fair. And yes, we are in some ways in new and challenging times. And also, nothing is ever, there's nothing new under the sun at the same time, right? And Ben Shapiro just recently said something on a panel the other day of like, and this is not this is not a winning argument to these young disaffected people, but like respectfully read a book and like talk to your grandfather, you know, like it's actually not true what a lot of people believe about like how uniquely difficult it is to live in America in 2025. And that should sound fucking ridiculous also, right? How uniquely difficult it is to live in the Western world, you know, to live in North America, or, you know, to live in the English speaking world in 2025. That's not a winning argument, and it used to be, or at least it was on the right. Like there were enough, and I have to hope that there are still a lot of people who believe that, and that this really is largely an online phenomenon that is inflated because of bots and foreigners and all of this stuff. And it can't be underestimated or undervalued. Like, if you're selling an anti-Semitic message, that is just a steak, you know, like a sizzling steak for a lot of the third world, you know, like there are as unbiased as you can get, like polling, you know, organizations that go and like ask questions about like hostility towards Jews, and, you know, like in the Middle East and North Africa and stuff, you literally get like 90% plus responses, like affirmative responses of Jew hatred. And that's like accounting for the fact of like people who would do like socially desirable responding, you know what I mean? Like, because there's not even a social stigma about it. And so there are so many countries across the world where if you stub your toe, you're screaming Jew instead of like fuck. Like it is just that ingrained. And so there is something sad for the right wing to have like a lot of their popular commentariat right now attracting such like a third world audience. This is my like Drew Pavlou commentary, I guess. Not that he's doing it, he calls this stuff out too, where like it is cringe, you know. It's like, why is the right now also pandering and basically selling a message to the third world?
I don't know. And the reason why the right won was they looked like they were having more fun than the left. Like that's one of the main reasons. Like their messaging was better. They looked cooler, and they looked like they were enjoying themselves more. Like it like the left was miserable. Coming up to the last, like nobody, there was no joy. There was not like, and say what you will, but it just looked more appealing. Who looked more appealing to people?
Totally.
And the right started to like, where the left got super, super popular and culturally very relevant, that started to like be a bit fatigued. So there was like this opening for more young people, you know what I mean, to see the right as like a bit of a rebellion to what was going on. And because it looked more, you know, interesting and fun. So yes, it had like a sexy, if you will, message or feel to it for the last election. I don't know that will stick around, especially if people are whining about, you know, if the grievances, you know, type politics sticks around. But I have to hope that in the next 2 years that some things will settle into something else, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the right doesn't deal with its fucking fringe, then it'll get eaten alive
Yeah.
the same way that we saw the left. And that was one of the things, I stayed on the left too long. And I also don't want to stick around, you know what I mean? Part of me is
Right.
I don't want to stick around somewhere, just, I don't know.
You
For
don't want to go
whatever
down with this
reason.
sinking
Well,
ship. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to keep making a mistake just because I've been making it for a while,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and on the left, I didn't leave because it really personally affected me. But I guess with the Jew hatred stuff on the right, it's a little bit harder for me to ignore in a way that it is profoundly fucked up to be a Jew on the internet these days,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
messaging. It is exhausting.
It is.
just
And
exhausting.
maybe that is part of the reason where what you just said there really resonates with me. I don't want to make the same mistake. I stayed on the sinking ship too long on the left. I don't want to do that on the right. I want, I would hope that I'll recognize, all of the signs of the ship going down. But yeah, I mean, the personal is political, another left-wing phrase, right? But I really want and need in so many ways the right wing to be a strong, sensible, conservative coalition and movement, because the left is gone.
Yeah.
It is also completely devoured by anti-Semites, and this is why I really do get so frustrated when I'm debating people, on the left, who try to argue with me about that. Okay, yes, it's not every single person. It's a fucking lot of them, and it is the ascendant movement, and the movement that has been ascendant for at least 15 years, and it is only becoming more popular. We're now we're getting into election season. People are preparing for the midterms and stuff like that. And every progressive candidate who's running on the left is their first thing is to stop funding to Israel and to not take any money from AIPAC. They are virtue signaling on anti-Jewish hostility.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I want the right to succeed. I saw someone make a tweet that I really disagreed with, and I was like, this is not a good look for us Jews who have crossed the political spectrum. But he was basically he was republishing an article that he had written probably close to a decade ago, in the earlier days of the Trump phenomenon, when he had moved from the left to the right. It was coming out as a conservative on campus, basically. It's 10 years ago, this guy was in college and switched his political ideology and whatever. And he put out this thing, he reshared that and was just I saw the problems with my party and my movement and whatever. And if the right chooses to go down that same path and get eaten by its extremists, blah, blah, blah. He was and he was talking about Nick Fuentes in particular, but he was if this happens, I'm voting for Elizabeth Warren. And I was like, whoa, I'm not, I'm not I only the only way that you could really get me to say that I'm going to vote for some standard progressive politician would literally be if they're running against Nick Fuentes, as president. And even then, depending on who it is, I don't know, I don't actually believe that the more heavily coded anti-Jewish hatred on the left is any less dangerous than the anti-Jewish hatred on the right that is a little more explicit and Nazi-esque, right? The Soviets persecuted the Jews, the communists persecuted the Jews in different ways from the fascists, but they persecuted the Jews nonetheless, slaughtered them and sent them to camps and gulags and all of these things. And so I don't feel that way. I don't feel if the right makes all these issues, I'm going to go back to the left. And so I just don't want to be homeless. And again, that's a me problem, right? I need to get over that and maybe get used to that feeling. But I don't see the left as viable.
No, not for a long time.
Yeah.
Anyways. Not the way it is. And they have they're not, it doesn't seem that they have any incentive to really shift
No.
away from some of that. And I don't know what where I see their messaging right now. It's kind of not very strong, like in any, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't
Mhm.
tell you exactly where the current like bulk of the left is going or what they specifically like
Yeah.
want right now in like an easy summary. I just know like directionally that they are not moving towards a direction that I think is,
No.
you know, going to be beneficial for anything, you know. And Canada's even worse in some ways because we've gone like, you know, so far, you know,
Mhm.
so far like past in certain things that are now in like our charter of rights and stuff like that. It's just it's all fucked up. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I think we talked about this last time, but like, well, in some ways, my vote in 2024 was both a vote for the right because that and me conceptualizing how I see myself, my political alignment, and it was also in another roundabout way, like an accelerationist vote for the left. I did believe very naively, and again, I've come to like conceptualize this all differently after the election and in the time since, but I did believe or really hoped that Trump winning in 2024 was going to cause a reckoning on the left.
Yeah.
It didn't. It just so
No.
obviously didn't. And what frustrates me is like the only parts of the left or people or whatever who maybe seem to be slightly changing course are explicitly doing so, in their own words, are doing so because they see that it was an optical loser to be so explicitly woke.
Yeah.
They are saying, I don't disavow any of the things that I said or believed, but people don't like it when we talk like this. It's off-putting, you know, like some of these people are really dumb and uneducated. So we don't want them to, we don't want them to be angry and insecure. So we're going to do it more gently. You know what I mean? Like there has been the reckoning of anti-white racism on the left is basically like people don't like hearing about it so much. Not like, wow, this was fundamentally wrong and fucked up. And it's alienating people from our side, and it's alienating young people,
young men in general. That like, look what the fuck happened on the right.
And it was
like,
so obvious. There were so many people saying this is what we're going to get. If you focus, if you tell people that their skin color is the most important thing about them and the people around them, and that, you know, both for Black people and white people, and that white people have to own their white privilege. If you are telling people to think of themselves as a racial group first, you're gonna reap what you sow there. And it was so obvious in so many ways. And they haven't changed course at all. Like none of them, the moderates among them have conceded that the messaging was poor. That's it.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah. And you saw it on the left with people, with like young people moving away from like identifying as even like as any type of oppressor class, whether that means like adopting like trans non-binary identities or like adopting like some non plain white identity, do you know what I mean, or some type of queer identity, or like some mental health problem, and anything like any type of like victim status that they could play so that they weren't part of this class. And the right was not going to do that. So what happened on the right? Like, oh, they all became, well, not all, but many of them became fucking groypers and like low-key anti-Semitic racists that are having a heyday now. And that was, of course, that was going to happen, especially with young people. Like I've said, they don't feel like they have power. They don't think that they are oppressors because they are not oppressors. And if you give them like it's this or nothing, they are going to find a way to make themselves not that, just like on a psychological level, because it doesn't even make sense to them. You know? And now look look where we are. Like,
Yeah.
very, very clearly. You know what I mean? And nobody's better for it. You know,
No.
we're not healthier. We're not happier. It didn't solve anything. Like, it didn't
at the
it didn't help
individual
the
level
people.
and the societal level.
Yeah,
which
it
is
didn't help the
always what
people
I
it was
come
meant
back
to
to,
help.
right? No.
Yeah, so things didn't get better.
No.
In that regard. Like,
and there's no fucking, my God, again, it actually is exhausting, because even now, like, there are still like debates about, you know, affirmative action and DEI. And the moderate people or the reasonable people on the left still won't concede any of those things that, like, it didn't create. And then they'll do this weird thing of like, well, actually it benefits like white women more than anyone else, you know. Well, great, then apparently it's not fucking working, even by the standards that you set out for it, right? Like, first of all, that's not that Crimea River, like, okay, even if white women are also benefiting from this because it's discriminating on the basis of sex, right, which is bad, we disagree with that, we don't want that to happen. But like, there is really, this is why I say there's just like nothing left for me on the left. There is no reckoning with how it's A, ineffective, and B, even if it like were effective, let's say it were like actually right, it still has a trade-off and a cost, like we talked about in this being sort of a conservative framework reviewing the world. So even if, let's say, it actually was bringing up the level of minority representation in universities, let's say, just like as an example, and all of these people, and it was like representative across class, because what you see a lot of times is you'll see people from these minority communities, but they're like first generation, like, you know, immigrants from like wealthy families whose parents are lawyers and doctors, right? So you didn't bring like the inner city kid out of you know, his environmental environment and stuff, like educational environment and stuff like this. You know, you picked someone with the same skin color who was like competent, or they're accepting people who aren't competent. And those people, there's a huge dropout rate, like a much lower graduation rate than their white and Asian peers and stuff like this. But let's say all of that wasn't true. Let's say they were actually truly like lifting, you know, people out of the projects by doing this, right? And that even if they selected people with like lower test scores, these people, once they got into school, or, you know, once they got into that university, they were able to perform at the same level. Even if all of those things were true, it would still build this social animosity, because it is a zero-sum game. And if you are allowing people in with lower scores, you are not accepting people who achieved higher, who studied and earned that position. So even if it had the desired outcome, which it doesn't, which it's fucking failing across the board, but even if it was entirely successful, it would still, it's still a problem. It's still unjust. It's still un-American, you know? It's still anti-individual. And so it would still be a problem. And there's just no reckoning at all.
No, I saw Ryan talking to, I guess, one of his, I'm not sure, another lawyer on his stream, but it was not Gen Z attorney. It was, I think it's Michael, and he's like a leftist. So, and they were talking about this, and he couldn't seem to grasp that there were problems with like the admission policies,
the like young soft-spoken guy,
and giving a boost to applicants based on their race, because the intention was good, and the intention cannot matter,
right?
You have to go by like what is happening, right? Like the intention. And ascribing
intention matters.
And ascribing
intention,
worse things with like, bad intentions. Like, I don't know. It didn't make sense. Like, the intentions of the policy, they could be good, but that doesn't impact it. That doesn't affect what the outcome is. Like, you know, like that's it.
Yeah. Intention matters interpersonally, right? We should be gracious and generous with people. We shouldn't assume the worst in people, right? All of these things. It can't, like you said, it can't matter with government intervention. That's a really heavy hand. That has really significant consequences, potentially long-term consequences. It can't matter what the intentions are, right?
Yes.
you need to look at the results, and right, it's like, even if the results were great, you have to then look at the unintended consequences too. You need to
Yes.
see what has come of this project.
Yes.
Right, and you can't,
if you have,
yeah, it is so crazy to be looking back in hindsight and to be able to acknowledge that it has failed in its mission,
yes.
and still be like, but the intentions.
Yeah. And like, if you have a framework that doesn't take those things into account, do you know what I mean? That is not working from that, then the intention doesn't matter. If the rules are just fair, then the rules are just fair. Then you don't need to sit there and like stress or angst about the outcomes, because the rules like at that level are fair. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need to fix things in schools. You know what I mean? Like, everybody deserves good education. That's a whole thing with you guys in your Department of Education that I don't quite necessarily, I don't know that I agree with, but like that, the entrance to university is not the place to do the tweaking. If there needs to be tweaking, that cannot be where the intervention comes. If there are disparities at that level that are caused from things like earlier down the chain, then you need to start earlier, to make sure that other things are equal, not that you're fixing it at the end, like that just doesn't, it kind of like allows,
or even if you're
all those other problems to kind of just like keep going.
No, and I agree with you. I definitely agree with you, right? Like, you need people from a much younger, it needs to start younger, essentially, right? And not just trying to target it at the level of acceptance into university or something. But also, even if you're going to do this like later intervention, let's say, it can't be they get into the university with lower scores. It can be that again, like, I don't know, this is something that I would personally be in favor of, but like, whatever, some type of like state financial intervention in essentially like remedial courses or tutoring of some kind or something that would be allocated on the basis of economic need or something, right? Economic need and academic performance at some intersection, right, of those two things. It would have to be completely colorblind, right, in its application, completely sex blind, and all of these things. And again, like, you could argue that, sure, like, I would be hesitant just based on like, where how we fund these things, but like, in theory, that's something like, okay, totally cool. In ways that it makes sense, in other ways, like, you give people job training even like later in life, right? If they're going to need to go into whatever, there are sensible things to do that don't include, like you're saying, at the level of acceptance into schools, that you are prioritizing people who have performed lower, like, because then you are punishing people who performed higher. It is a zero sum game in that way. And this is still controversial. Like, you actually can't, is there anyone on anyone that on the left who's like against affirmative action?
I don't know. I'm sure there are.
I literally can't name them.
I don't know. Like, nobody I know personally, definitely, but like, I'm sure there's people out there, like, maybe,
like 3 of them. Yeah.
I think like maybe Destiny is against affirmative action in the way it's like rolled out that way. Maybe Hutch. I could see being like,
I don't think Hutch is. No.
Maybe.
Hutch and more. And again, I really like Hutch. He's my favorite of like all of those people by far, like leaps and bounds above everyone else. But no, not really. Hutch, if anything, he more falls into the category of like, he sees why some of these things are optic losers.
Fair enough.
I don't think he's against it. And even with Destiny, I think you're probably right. It's hard to know with Destiny because he has ebbed and flowed. And like, when he was fighting the left from the left, he would make strong arguments, against these things. But in the last couple of years, right, after he felt sort of used by conservatives and stuff like that, and his mission is really only attacking the right, I think what Destiny would say about something like that today in 2025 is like,
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, no, it really does matter, because
Yeah.
again, especially if you think that like America is facing a fascist takeover, which I don't think we are, but I certainly think there are segments on the right who want that. Like that's an unassailable truth. But I don't think that we're facing that in any meaningful way under the Trump administration right now. But let's say you believed that. Well, guess what's radicalizing these Nazis who want the fascist takeover of the United States? It is the both real and imagined actual discrimination that they are facing, right? It's true, they're victimizing themselves, and they're perseverating in ways that the left, they're totally they're totally entrenched in the victim culture, but it's not completely baseless. They are actually being discriminated against in the literal ways, and they're being demonized. They, in left-wing popular culture, it is very common to demonize men, especially straight men, especially straight white men. It's a meme for a reason. It's real. So like, actually that does matter. It actually should matter. Even if your greatest concern is the fascist takeover of America, then we need to, part of stopping to radicalize people is to actually stop discriminating against people on the basis of race.
Yes. And it's to stop creating this type of, like, to stop making the tensions worse and pushing people further, siloing everybody off, which, like, right now the like effective polarization is just very, like, I don't know if there's ever been a time where that's worse. Not necessarily the worst times ever, but like insofar as like the sides hating each other and it becoming like team sports, if you will, and the complete demonization of one side over the other, this broadly, but with this many people, you know what I mean? Where politics has become hobbies for most people, and it's become like a source of entertainment as well. Where so much time and energy is put into it, and we're living in a world where political pundits are now like celebrities in ways that never were before. There wasn't as much like it wasn't as lucrative, and the fame ceiling was not quite like this. The ceiling was much lower before, and now it's like very high. So all of these things, build to this world of where we are, and it's
and we are in a time of like escalation in reciprocal radicalization. It's both sides feed the other, right? Which is why there is blame to go around. It's so hard to be white pilled. I try, and some days are different than others, but how do you get out of that cycle? Because again, it's such a potent pot of grievance and self-pity and victimization and populism and nihilism, and the actual solutions no one wants to hear.
I guess
and the answer is there are no perfect solutions. There is no silver bullet.
There are definitely
and no one's coming
solutions
to save you.
But I like to think that, like, if I was very, very far left, I know you were too, right? And if I can stop being that way, then other people can. Like, I don't know
so true.
I don't know how it happened, and like, it's like I've said, it's not like I don't have the fucking the points to like lay down my victim cards and get some good fucking leftist credibility. I have plenty of that I can use if I want. That was just like that didn't do anything for my life. It didn't make my life any better. It didn't make me any happier. And in the end, I began to see that the way I was viewing the world didn't quite it didn't make sense anymore. And there were no principles. There were no principles. Everything was like so subjective that it's just like it was exhausting. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think if there are people like us who are like super true believers,
Yeah.
like really invested, and I spent most of my life that way, you know,
Right.
that other people can move, that people can be moved. It's that they really
Yeah.
have to get there. It's like, how do you help people start to think about things? You know, how do
Mm-hmm.
you start to encourage people to question things without making them become defensive about
Right.
it? Because that's typically what happens, is like you bring things up, people get very defensive over it, they don't want to talk, you know what I mean? So it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you start piquing people's curiosity into their own like epistemology, or into their own,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how they make sense of things. But you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, such a good point. And well, not to beat a dead horse, but I know you and I are both big Peter Boghossian fans, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something beautiful about his street epistemology, is getting people to question why they think the way they think, and like how attached they are to those ideas, right? How
Yeah.
confident they are in their beliefs. And I think that's really important. And you make another great point, that you and I were really dug in and real true believers, and had social incentives, at least not financial necessarily, but social incentives
Mm-hmm.
to like stay on that course. And we changed our minds. And you're right. And
Yeah.
I really do believe that. So thank you. That's a good white pill. I needed that. I needed to be reminded of that, because I actually fundamentally believe that. It's part of why I don't give in so easily to the demonization from both sides of the other. Like, even when I was first changing my mind, and there are people who wanted to paint the woke movement as sort of nefarious. And it's like, no, so many people really are true believers who think that they're making the world a better place and improving, the lived experience of marginalized groups and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, I think you're right about that. It's just like, how do we do it? And I think everyone has a different role, I guess, and there's probably different approaches for different people, like, because I think you're right. Like, on the individual level, and back to this American Nazi guy that I was referencing before, you don't want to alienate individual people. Like, the door needs to be open in some way. And this guy said it himself. He's like, it doesn't work by telling them that they're wrong. That the people don't think they're wrong. They don't want to be told they're wrong. They don't want to be told that they're a bad person. None of that is effective. Right. And so like the door sort of needs to be open, but then also then there's this thin line, and things start to like creep, and then suddenly the door being open turns into uncritical examination and like acceptance of some person, right? So then it's like, so for the average person who's like invested in these or interested in these dissident right, white nationalist, whatever you want to call it, ideas, you want to lead with love, as like gay as that sounds, and you want to leave the door open. But then it's like, for other people, like, you need to maybe challenge the rhetoric and kind of discard the like, I don't know what the line is, and I know discard the person, that's cancellation, and like, I don't know what you do. I think there does have to be,
like, you don't have to like,
we don't have to embrace
you have
them
to be
either.
associate with everybody that you don't want to. You don't have to be friends with everyone. You don't have to listen to everyone. You don't have to like spend your time or energy on people. It doesn't mean that you're trying to, cancellation is not just, we've talked about it. It's not just like not talking to somebody or not sharing their viewpoint. You know what I mean? It's like a concerted effort to like deperson somebody from the world. So,
right.
You don't need to do that.
This is a slippery thing that a lot of people in the right have been engaging in, and it's not cool. They are, and this is again another problem, and maybe why I'm like sensitive to the optics of being someone from the left having conversations on the right, is because they are, the left is the boogeyman of the right, in the same way that the right is the boogeyman of the left, but the left is the boogeyman of the right. So if you can label any, if you can label any behavior or movement or thing as like left wing, you can demonize, you can alienate it from the right wing movement. And so when you have people coming out and saying, like, don't take away his YouTube, don't take away his Rumble, don't take away his bank, but this guy's a fucking idiot, he's cancerous to our movement, he's trying to lead you, towards social, whatever, like all of these things, is like, is that my phone? No, okay.
No, it's mine.
Okay. that is not cancellation, and it is being branded as cancellation by people on the left in a I have to say dishonest way. Like, it's hard to
Yes.
believe that any of these people actually believe that what these people are, what these right-wing people are, traditionally conservative people are trying to do is cancel these other people. And so,
Yeah.
and then, and when I say that, I kind of pause for a second and laugh, because many people are accusing James Lindsay of doing this. He has attached a left-wing label to people on the right, woke, to alienate this behavior, this line of thinking, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you could make the argument that is he also, and they make the same argument. He's trying to separate the right, he's trying to call people on the right left who aren't left, and blah, blah, blah. But I agree with a lot of what James Lindsay is saying, right? And he I think it took him a while to be coherent about it, to kind of flesh it out publicly, but it is really coherent. It is it's a critical, worldview where you wake up to the reality that, like, there is some group of people or some institution or whatever that is holding you down and oppressing you, and that, and it just goes in a different direction. It literally is. It is wokeness. It's a very similar framework, but happening with a different boogeyman and a different scapegoat and whatever.
It's victim. It's like being a victim, just from a different, you know what I mean? It's just the oppression's coming from a slightly different place. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's all comes down to, like, being oppressed, being a victim, and having some type of grievance, politics.
But it is actually incredible how much the victimhood narrative has just spread to the right, because that was what was mocked about the left. That was rightfully mocked about the left. And it's not everyone on the right. It's really not. And the pushback to it comes exclusively from the right too, So again, I think I have seen more of a bulwark against this stuff on the right than on the left. There has been no successful movement on the left to try to push back against any of this stuff. And so the people who are countering this movement, the people who are sort of anti-populist and saying, no, you do need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps, even if things are harder and life isn't always fair, those people still do exclusively come from the right. But it is kind of jarring how many people, and maybe some of these people are doing what we were just talking about a minute ago. They're trying to leave the door open. And that's what people like Megyn Kelly charitably attribute to Tucker Carlson. She says, and people who want to still work with Tucker are saying, Tucker wants to bring in all the disaffected young people who are attracted to Nick Fuentes and, and steer them in the right direction or whatever.
Yeah. They might have a better argument if this was like an interview rather than like the repertoire of like interviews and the direction that he's taken over the last 6 months. You know what I mean? Because it does not seem to suggest that he just wants to bring in these disaffected young people to, make sure that they don't go too astray. It seems like
no, it's not even plausible.
He has gone very astray. And I think I said something to the effect, like, the only thing I could, I hope charitably Megyn is actually doing that. I'm not convinced that she's doing that. Do you know what I mean? That's the only charitable thing, like the way I could make sense of her. I don't know, her messaging on this over the last little while, and maybe she just wants to stay a sane, credible person, and not alienate that audience, and kind of still have them still have their ear, if you will. But that's like at the most charitable, and there's nothing to lead me to believe right now that that's so. I'm just saying it could be, like. I'm not entirely sure that she's like, got the fucking brain virus.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, it's looking like maybe, which is like fucking sad. It's a bummer. You know what I mean?
It is a bummer. And we talked about this yesterday. And I was also like, I was trying to be charitable to Megan. I really liked Megan. I was watching her show every day for a while, and I just don't anymore.
Yeah, no, same.
And I thought, I was really trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know. I don't think so. I think she has a brain worm. And I know that's an easy way to write it off. And like I try to be conscious of these things. Like this is what people on both sides, I guess, do, right? You can just dismiss it. I was getting a phone call, but they hung up. Never mind. And so I don't want to do that same thing. Oh, brain worm, and like just, but But I do think she does seem to have like drank from the well of like whatever is going around in this movement. I don't even know if it's just about the audience. Like I don't even know if it's just the financial and attention incentive. I'm not sure anymore. And it's sad and disheartening. And you can't be the moral responsible leader if you're going to call the person who's saying that, essentially that Jews kill Christian babies, for blood to put in their matzah, and just call this woman brilliant and misunderstood and like unfairly persecuted.
And at the same time refuse to like look into anything she's saying while calling her brilliant. And I don't know. You would think that somebody would want to be more, I don't know, careful about how they spoke about how they the glowing reviews that they would give to somebody, when you have that much that many people listening to you and taking your views on things to carry some weight behind it. I'm gonna have to wrap soon, but just before we go, can we just touch on Candace?
It's so funny. I was about to say the same thing. Because we kind of got there. Well, maybe you should reiterate, because you kind of blew my mind yesterday. And the more I think about it, it is kind of obvious, but maybe not so obvious. We were talking about Candace and, all of the just conspiracy theory and just like crazy shit that she is in and that she is spreading, and how people are calling her crazy. And actually, even more people in like the last week or so have been commenting in a sympathetic way to her. They basically see, this last iteration of her saying that the Israeli government and the French government are have a joined mission right now to assassinate Candace Owens in America. There are people who are commenting, basically saying like, wow, like she's having paranoid delusions. And like they're essentially praying for her, and you pray for her.
I've seen that. Yes.
I'm okay with that. Right. But who are like really like, she's clearly not well, she's having she's having this is mental illness on display. And you made a great point yesterday. Do you want to reiterate it here?
Well, I'm just gonna say I do not think, at one point I wondered a while back, this was way long ago, but not this. This is, I do not wonder currently if she is mentally ill. Candace is not. This is not mental illness. What we're seeing did not fit mental illness. It doesn't track mental illness. Candace is her speech. She sounds like a movie crazy person, like what we, what I mean? Like what people like attribute to like, oh, being crazy and wacky, like maybe in movies or television. But when she's talking, Candace is oriented to time and place. Her speech is not disorganized. She is not speaking with word salad. She is not chaotic. She is not hard to follow. Her ideas are not jumbled. She is not jumping from tangent to tangent. She's not decompensating. She is showering. She is putting on makeup. She is changing her clothes. She is keeping to a schedule. There are things that happen when somebody becomes psychotic, when somebody's in psychosis, if somebody is, for any reason, whether it's drugs or whether it's mental illness or whatever. Like there are things that happen along with delusions when you're psychotic that there is no sign of. And so I cannot think that she is mentally ill and that this is just her being crazy when everything else is pointing to her being completely completely sane in that way. I think it's much more likely that she is motivated by money, that she married a man who's best friends with a guy from InfoWars, that she left Daily Wire, that when she left Turning Points USA, it had to do something with Jews. And she left Daily Wire, there were Jews there, and she had a fucking, axe to grind with the Jews. And she saw, with InfoWars being down, when it was, before I guess Alex Jones came back, like an opportunity to become essentially a conspiracy theorist. And she had an audience, and she just, filled a like there was a market for it, and there were people hungry for what she was saying, and she had an an anti-establishment audience. So this all goes down, and all of her delusions or whatever all track things that she's spoken about. Like they're not new things. They're out there, but they're not unlogical. She's not like there's a fucking dragon outside my window that has a sword and trying to kill me. You know what I mean? These are that's fantastical, or bizarre. Like that hers are still rooted within the type of conspiracy world that she is making money on. And her views have gone up insanely just on YouTube. She's gone from 1 million or 2 million views for her live show to getting 3 to 4 million, sometimes higher. So the incentive structure is there. And I can't believe that nobody close to her would call her intervene. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's just no way.
Yeah. And this really blew my mind, because it was such a good point that you made about her, the words she's saying in isolation, you could attribute to these being paranoid delusions of a schizophrenic person. But then you look at her, and like you said, she knows where she is. She is plugged into reality. She's grooming herself. She's taking care of herself. And when we spoke about this yesterday, I kind of first countered this with well, maybe this is just what a truly crazy person looks like who's rich. A rich person who has the resources to maybe be on some medication and just to have all these things. But then I was well, no, because we've also seen plenty of examples of rich and famous people who succumb in the very human way to mental illness. I mean, Britney Spears just being the glaring example, right? And she had all the money, and there were more money. I mean, I don't know if we account for time, whatever. I'm going to assume she had much more celebrity and fame and, attention on her than Candace Owens, right? And her mental breakdown looked like a crazy person on the street. Shaved her head and charging after people, and even Britney Spears, the whole Free Britney thing. Britney Spears right now is clearly completely unwell, even if she deserves, some level of autonomy and in her life, she's obviously unwell in a way that she actually comes across as not as blank behind the eyes, and not attuned to time and place. And she's not taking care of her kids, she had her kids and people who are coming out, she's not in a way that, as far as we can tell, Candace totally is. And that really rocked my world. Because it is again, maybe a little more comforting to believe that Candace is just crazy. And maybe she is a little crazy, but
this is
not necessarily a psychotic breakdown.
Yeah. And no, I certainly don't think so. And she's we've seen what crazy people look like, even famous crazy people. They generally don't do things that are only good for their bottom line. Let's just say, you know what I mean? They generally are not posting things that are getting them more fame and prominence, and she's with everything she's doing, she's still functioning within a very particular and narrow framework, and that hasn't changed. You know what I mean? She hasn't gone so far afield yet that I could think that she's completely lost her
That it's just a
mind,
natural
you know?
manifestation of psychosis or something.
Yeah, I think it's meant to be out there. Definitely, it's meant to get people talking, and you know what I mean? It's meant to get people speculating. Like, I think she's very, I think she knows exactly what she's doing. I just think she's malevolent. Like, I just think she's a bad person. I think she's willing to leverage all of these things for whatever the gains are. And I don't know what her end goal is, honestly. But yeah,
well,
I
and
don't
listen,
think she's just nuts.
I'm a not a Daily Wire simp, but like, you know, I support the Daily Wire and all of that, and as an institution, but they're responsible for promoting her in that way, because she was she hit the right boxes. She was like a convenient, beneficial person to have, you know, as a talking head, and she was feisty, and she's Black, so she has that immediate card that she can pull out, right, to trump certain parts of the conversation and to fight in the culture war. But she really has been, you know, like just a shapeshifter throughout her career, completely, in a really like transparent way. Yeah, and so I'm glad we touched on this, because you really rocked my world yesterday. That Candace, even if she is mentally ill, like she's not at the point, she's not in a full psychotic state. And you and I were saying, like, anyone who's seen mentally ill people, and I worked as a case manager for homeless people with severe mental illness. And they don't look like Candace Owens. They can't track a conversation, you know, in so many ways.
And it takes away her agency. When we do that, it infantilizes her, it takes away her agency, and it removes her responsibility and her culpability for the things she's saying. And we shouldn't do that, because she's saying shit that she should, you know, I don't know how we make her responsible or accountable for, but that she is responsible and accountable for however that ends up looking. And she doesn't get to just, like, you know what I mean, escape it. And we shouldn't just excuse it by saying she's crazy, you know.
Yeah, I agree. All right, 2 hours. Good job, Kay.
Awesome. I'm going to end it here. We will talk again soon. Thank you to the people watching.
Yeah, good chat, guys.
Yeah, hopefully we can do this again. And I gotta go get my kids. So have a good one, Tali.
Like the video. Kay will send it over to me. I'm going to upload it onto my channel. One of these days I'll stream live, but, you know, I'll upload it to my channel. And subscribe to both of our channels, please.
Yes, subscribe. And Tali's at Off My Chest. Is that it?
I'm at Tali Bots.
At Tali Bots.
Tali Bots. Yeah.
It should be in the on the whatever it is, the thumbnail.
I think there's a way too now on YouTube to like co-author a post, like in the way that you can on Instagram. We should figure out how to do that and just get our things like up in one thing.
Up and together. Yeah. All right. We'll figure that out for next time.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Thanks, Kay. Bye.
See you later. Bye.